Between lights and silences, she was born to shine. From a very young age, the eyes of the world seemed destined to follow her. Every move she made on stage was applauded as if the world depended on those notes, those steps, that presence. Her name was printed on magazine covers, glowing billboards, headlines of international websites. The world knew her, the world wanted her, but no one knew who she was when the lights went out. On the other side of that same stage, the part no one sees, the part no one notices, was him, a simple guy with calloused hands and quiet steps, who walked in after the show ended, broom in one hand and a bucket in the other. His world was made of backstage silence and invisibility. While everyone applauded the star, he swept up the confetti. While crowds screamed her name, he picked up the empty cups left behind in a rush. No one knew his name, no one looked him in the eyes, but he saw her, truly saw her. He watched from a distance, not like someone longing for the unreachable, but like someone who sees behind the mask. He saw exhaustion hidden behind glamour, loneliness tucked beneath flawless makeup, and a sparkle in her eyes that didn't always match the applause. She smiled at the world, but there was something in that smile. Something silently crying, out for help. She, surrounded by people yet completely alone. He, alone in the world, yet fully aware of every detail. And it was on one of those nights, after the crowd had already gone, that the unlikely began. A stumble backstage, a brief glance caught in a mirror's reflection, a moment where silence spoke louder than any word. But this wasn't a fairy tale. This was real life. And in real life, people like her don't fall in love with people like him. Still, something connected them, something invisible, deep, impossible to explain. She saw him like no one ever had. He heard her like no one ever did. And little by little, two distant worlds began to touch, not without pain, not without fear, not without resistance, but with a truth that neither fame nor silence could ever silence. No one would understand. No one would accept it. But love, when it's real, doesn't need to be understood. It only needs to be felt. What they would live from that moment on, no one could predict. But one thing was certain. Not all stories begin with once upon a time. Some begin when the lights go out, and two silences choose to meet. Chapter 1. The Sound of Silence. He always arrived after the show was over, when the applause faded, when the music stopped, when people left carrying laughter, selfies and memories that would last until the next performance. That's when he stepped onto the scene, without lights, without an audience, without recognition. Matthias was 27. He worked as a cleaning assistant for a third-party company contracted to large events. Shy, soft-spoken, always in a hurry, he was the kind of person people bumped into without even apologizing. That night, like so many others, he was there, broom in hand, eyes on the ground, focused on every crumpled paper, every forgotten bottle. But something was different. There on stage, alone, sitting on one of the sound boxes, she was still there. The artist, the star, the hurricane of light that drew crowds. Isabelle Moraes. The name the world knew. The woman he had only admired from afar. She was there, alone, no makeup, no rehearsed smiles, her head resting on her knees, as if carrying a weight heavier than her thin frame could bear. Matthias hesitated. He shouldn't be there, not with her still around. But he couldn't leave. Something inside him called for silence, respect, presence. You can keep going, she said suddenly, without even lifting her head. I'm used to being ignored. The words cut deeper than any scream. Coming from someone like her, they made no sense. But there was truth in that tired voice. Matthias kept sweeping, slower now, trying not to make noise, but she stood up, walked to the edge of the stage, and looked right at him. You've seen me before, haven't you? He nodded, surprised to be noticed. And what do you see? Matthias thought for a moment, took a deep breath and replied simply, a tired woman trying to be strong all the time. Isabelle swallowed hard. No one spoke to her like that. Everyone praised her. Everyone flattered her. But that guy, dust-covered, hands trembling, with honest eyes, had seen what no one else could. Do you know what it's like to be surrounded by people and still feel alone? Matthias just nodded. He knew. She sat back down. They stayed in silence. A silence that was comfortable, genuine, rare. Little by little they talked. Simple words, a bit awkward, but real. She told him about the pressure, the absence of family, the nights she cried alone in the dressing room. He spoke of his sick mother, his younger brother he looked after, the nights he slept on the bus because his paycheck didn't stretch far enough. And then came the question that would change everything. Do you believe two people from different worlds can really understand each other? Matthias looked into her eyes and said, it doesn't matter where we come from. What matters is what we carry inside. Isabelle smiled for the first time that night. A fragile smile, but a true one. In the following days, he started arriving just a bit earlier, before the show ended. He'd hide backstage, waiting, and she began staying after the stage went dark. They talked about everything, about nothing. She shared lyrics she never had the courage to record. He told stories from the street, of simple people, of real struggles, and with each night, the invisible bond between them grew stronger. But the outside world kept turning. Fame never sleeps. The media doesn't forgive, and Isabelle knew that if anyone found out, he'd be the first to be crushed. They'll never understand, she said one night as they sat atop the empty bleachers, gazing out at the city lights. They don't need to, Matthias replied. We just have to be honest with each other. She looked at him like someone who wanted to believe, like someone begging for a place where she could simply be. But the world is cruel to unlikely loves, and the improbable is often treated like a mistake. One night, a video leaked, filmed secretly by someone on the crew with no context. It showed her hugging him backstage. No sound, no explanation, just the image of a world that made no sense to those who lived by appearances. The internet exploded. Headlines screamed, "International star involved with cleaning staff." New love scandal shakes Isabelle Moraes' image. Matthias was fired. No warning, no chance to explain. Isabelle tried to protect him, tried to speak out. But million-dollar contracts don't tolerate scandal. And once again, silence became their only form of communication. On the last night of the tour, Isabelle sang differently, her voice trembling, eyes filled with tears. The final song was unreleased. No one had heard it before, but those who listened with their hearts knew. Every word was for him. She sang about love born in the invisible, about meetings that defy logic, about the value of small presences, and in the chorus, the painful truth. If the world keeps us apart, may it at least hear what we leave unspoken. The audience gave her a standing ovation, without understanding, but someone in the last row, wearing an old crew uniform sweeping the final steps of the bleachers, was smiling, eyes full of tears. Matthias was listening, and even though he wasn't beside her, he knew that true love doesn't need a stage. Chapter 2. When Love Speaks Louder. Months went by. Her name was still on the headlines, but now with less sparkle and more pressure. The label demanded more commercial hits. The producers complained about her distant attitude. Isabelle followed, schedules, smiled for photos, released new songs. But something had changed. Something inside her had gone quiet, and no microphone could amplify what her heart insisted on hiding. As for Matthias, he had returned to his old routine. Now he cleaned office buildings at night. He had traded stages for the cold hallways of places where no one even greeted him, but every night, after his shift, he would stop for a few minutes in front of the same theater where it all began, and he would look, just look, like someone looking at a memory, like someone still hearing a song no one else could hear. Then, on a rainy morning, the unexpected happened. Isabelle disappeared. Her team released a statement saying she had cancelled all her commitments for health reasons. But the truth, only she knew. Far from the media, the noise, the contracts, she boarded a regular city bus and went to a forgotten neighborhood. Backpack on her shoulders, no makeup, no bodyguards, her heart pounding louder than any applause. She got off 2 blocks before the right stop. She wanted to walk, to think, to feel the city again, the way he saw it. She arrived at the modest building where he lived, climbed the stairs, no elevator, and stood in front of door 304. She took a deep breath, knocked. Silence. She knocked again. This time, firmer, the door opened slowly, and there he was, wide-eyed, plain shirt, dust on his shoulders. For a second, neither of them said anything. They just looked at each other, and in that look everything was said. "What are you doing here?" he asked, voice shaky. She smiled, the way only he had seen before. "I came to listen up close, to the silence I've never been able to forget." They sat in the small kitchen. She told him everything. The pressure, the demands, the emptiness fame couldn't fill. "I realized the thing I missed the most was the one thing that can't be bought." "And what was that?" he asked. She reached out, gently touched his hand, and replied, "Truth." That night, Isabelle stayed. She slept on the living room couch with the sound of rain tapping on the window. And in her chest, for the first time in a long time, peace. In the days that followed, she didn't go back. Not to the stage, not to the commitments. She returned to life, to herself, and with Mateus's help, she rediscovered what it meant to sing with soul. He took her to simple places, parks, schools, retirement homes. She, with her guitar in hand, sang to small audiences, but with eyes that truly shined. No cameras, no contracts, just truth, just love. Then, an independent production company heard about Isabelle's new phase. They invited her to do a documentary, not about her career, but about her transformation. She agreed, but with one condition, that Mateus be part of it. "The world needs to see your perspective," she said, "because it's what saved me." Mateus hesitated. He never liked the spotlight, but he understood this was bigger than him. The documentary was released with the title, "The Love the Stage Didn't See." It exploded online. But unlike the previous scandal, this time the world applauded. People were moved. They recognized her courage. They were inspired by the simplicity, and for the first time, she wasn't the only one shining. Mateus started getting invited to speak at events. He talked about invisibility, about dignity, about truly listening to others. And every time he stepped on a stage, she was there by his side, in silence, watching him like someone saying, "Now it's your turn." Today, the two live together, in a simple apartment full of plants and music. She still sings, but now she chooses what to sing, and for whom. He's still humble, but now he's heard. Together they show that the improbable is just what we haven't yet dared to live. And if anyone asks what brought two distant worlds together, they smile and say, silence. It was what spoke the loudest. Enjoyed this story? Then subscribe to the Golden Words channel so you won't miss any others. Every day we bring you touching and emotional stories. Leave a comment with the city and country you're listening from. Let's spread these stories worldwide.